Hello
Hello
there.
there.
Welcome back to another episode of Star Wars in the Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. I'm Eli.
I'm Jacob.
And today is a day. Today is a day that is... There's a lot of backstory I need to explain to this episode. First of all, this is one of the few episodes that we've had to record several times. This is our second recording of this episode. We originally recorded this episode in 2024. A lot has changed since then. For
To
us
say the
personally,
least. Yes,
world's
to say the least.
gone on. We're recording this on January 20th, 2025, which is an incredibly loaded day for a lot of people.
An
I feel like
inauspicious day, shall we
it's
say.
an incredibly great coincidence that we're doing Andor today. Like, I feel like it's incredibly fitting that we're doing Andor today.
Hope it's not a bad
Because I feel
omen,
like
but there we go.
because we need a little bit of a rebellious spirit in our life
Oh,
based
yeah.
on the new administration that's taken hold in the United States today. So yeah, yikes. And we're gonna keep on fighting the good fight for people that we care about. And yeah, but welcome back to Star Wars in the Galaxy. Another bit of prelude I have for this episode is, as I texted Jake about this last night, I posted about this on social media last night. This is the first episode after 5 years. This is the first episode since we've turned 5. And I want to thank
Good Lord.
everybody who has interacted with us in any way over the last 5 years. We've loved doing this show. This show has helped me through some really tough times. This show has changed my life for the better. I'll let, like, I don't want to speak for Jacob or anything. I'll let him say what he wants to say afterwards. But, like, really just the impact this show has had on me is immeasurable. And I'm so excited that people want to listen to the two of us talk Star Wars with each other. And here's to 5. Honestly, more is than the number. Here's to 5, and almost certainly more years. I don't know if that made sense.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's been a crazy ride. When you first suggested this, this little pod of ours, I honestly never expected that. Meet so many cool people, kind of get introduced to a whole community, and go on sort of this journey that we've gone on. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been absolutely incredible, and yeah, here's to 5 more years.
Absolutely. We're going to be continuing the celebration this weekend. It's going to come out on Friday. So in 2 days now, Jacob and I will be live streaming 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. The reason that a lot of our live streams are going to be funky times, because Jacob is... I'm not sure how much you want to disclose, but you're elsewhere. You're abroad at this time.
Yeah, different continent right now. So we're working. It isn't the first. Actually, for the podcast, yeah, this is the first time. But we're working across 9 time zones, so it's gonna get a little funky. It's gonna get a little weird. If only we had the world between worlds. I feel like
I know, right?
A little bit of rule bending would make this all a little bit easier right now.
And how fitting, I think, once you're in a time zone that will work a little bit well, whether that's the same time zone as me or 3 time zones ahead, which is a lot more manageable, I think that's when we'll start Rebels. So what a coincidence of that. So yeah, but either way, we're here to talk about the 4th episode of Star Wars Andor. Again, we recorded this episode once. Unfortunately, the audio glitched out. We didn't hear Jacob's part of it, so we decided we're going to record this again. It's been around a month since we recorded the episode the first time, so it's been a while since you've seen this episode. But we did watch this episode in preparation. I swear to God, this is the 4th episode of Andor, Aldhani, episode 160 of Star Wars in a Galaxy. And let's get into it. Yeah, in this episode, Aldhani, the 4th episode, we are branching into multiple different plots, multiple different subplots. The, what I called like the A plot and the B plot and the C plot and the D plot. So in order, I guess I will cover the different plots. The A plot I would consider as the plot with Cassian, as he's dropped off by Luthen on the planet Aldhani. Luthen offers him down payment of a crystal of a very valuable kyber crystal that was won in the victory against Rakatan invaders. We'll talk about that later. But Luthen offers him that as a down payment and a greater reward much later after he joins a rebel crew on the planet of Aldhani to engage in a heist where they're going to steal the quarterly payload for the entire sector of an Imperial garrison. However, the heist is not quite yet. They are bringing Cassian in, however, just before they engage in this heist, 5 days to be exact. He gets to meet the entire crew of that's engaging in this heist. That includes the leader Vel Sartha, her girlfriend Cinta Kaz, Karaman Barkona, Karis Nemec, Arvel Skeen, and Gorn. What's his name? What's his full name? I'm totally blanking on Gorn's full name. God dang it. Does he have a first name, or is he just go by Gorn?
I
No,
don't know. I don't know.
he's just Gorn. But anyway, they explain. But once Cassian, being called the code name of Clem, gets to where the rebels are making camp on Aldhani, they explain the plan, which is basically to rob the Imperial garrison while they're all distracted by an event that happens once every 3 years in the Aldhani system of the Eye, which are just which is just a bunch of comets going by. This happens once every 3 years in the Aldhani system. The locals have the natives of Aldhani have this whole religious and spiritual meaning behind this, but the imps just enjoy the pretty light show because they've appropriated the Imperials just enjoy the pretty light show because they've basically appropriated the meaning out of this planet that they've colonized for their own purposes because of its advantageous location within the sector that they're controlling through this empire that they have established. I think that's all in plotline A I would talk about. Plotline B, Luthen then ventures to Coruscant, where he resumes his day job of an antique dealer. It's his disguise. It's his persona that he puts on to engage with some wheeling and dealing in the high levels of Coruscant within the aristocracy of the Empire. One of the dealings he does on Coruscant is with a rebellious sympathetic senator named Mon Mothma, who represents the Chandrilla system, and who we know will eventually start the Alliance to Restore the Republic, aka the Capital R Rebellion. But this is several years before she will do that. For now, she is still playing the part she needs, which is basically just funneling money to Luthen and various other rebellious projects under the guise of being a senator embedded within the imperial aristocracy. But secretly, she struggles maintaining even her personal life with her social climbing husband, Perrin and her daughter, Lita, who we'll get to in future episodes. But she engages Luthen in a conversation at his antique shop, which on the surface is about a gift for her husband for his birthday, I think, but is really about funding and additional resources for Luthen's growing rebellious projects. Luthen's assistant Clea engages her driver, who as a distraction while Luthen and her engage in some backroom dealings. Meanwhile, C-plot. Yes, there are 4 different subplots in this episode. C-plot, we are introduced to the inner workings of the Imperial Security Bureau, mostly with regard to Dedra Miro, who takes a particular interest in an ISB agent who takes particular interest in the sector where Ferrix is located, despite it not being under her purview, squabbling with the ISB agent whose sector it is under control, named Blevin, as she attempts to navigate the ranks of the Imperial Security Bureau and ascertain both what her role is going to be and the various social politics that she has to play within the Imperial Security Bureau in order to be taken seriously and to get what she wants and to possibly even battle some internal misogyny that is within the institution. The D plot is that it is following Cyril Karn, following the events of Reckoning, where Blevin actually comes to him and his men saying, "You screwed this up so badly. It's like it's astonishing how badly you screwed this up." And so he moves back home on Coruscant with his mother Edie, who is like him, a staunch Imperial loyalist, as they regroup and figure out what to do because he had such a promising career within corporate security in the Morlana sector, and he's going to have to figure out his next path within the Imperial bureaucracy now that he so royally messed up, basically. Jacob, we have a lot to cover within this episode. This episode, again, we have 4 different plot lines to cover.
Yeah,
And
this is
the
a,
plot
this is
lines
a,
are only going
a juicy one.
the plot lines are only going to be getting more intense and more complicated as the show goes on. I will say, I think I said this when we recorded last time, which again, unfortunately, none of you are going to hear. But so I'm hoping that we're not just going to be like rehashing all the conversations we had last time and saying, "Oh, we talked about this last time." But but yeah, this is my favorite episode of all the episodes we've watched so far. Mostly because we get into the political plot lines, which are my favorite part of this show. What Mon goes through in this season with the how are you playing this double life? How is she, navigating she is going to eventually, we know she is going to found the capital R Rebellion Association. But
Yeah,
how is she going to get the money? How is she going to get the resources? She's only one person, but she's a powerful person. And how is this powerful, but still just a person, going to wheel and deal to try and get a full-on rebellion against the authoritarian fascist empire going? Like that's not just something you just do. It is something that takes a remarkable amount of forethought and a remarkable amount of
yeah, absolutely.
effort and going about things the right way. And Luthen's already doing a lot behind the scenes, but so is she. But where do you want us to do? We want to just go subplot by subplot, because I feel like that's kind of how we got to do
I think
this.
that would be the easiest, to be honest, kind of take each aspect. So we want to start off with
With
the
the Cassian
Aldhani,
subplot on
the Cassian
Aldhani,
subplot. Okay, yeah.
which will start with Luthen and Cassian on the ship. I forgot there's that whole
Yeah.
conversation that I didn't mention in the subplot, but in the beginning, but it really just leads them to, it's the conversation as they're en route to Aldhani.
Yeah. It's a great
And
conversation. I mean,
it's what I remember saying. Again, I'm trying not to do this as much as I can. Last time is we recorded this this is the conversation where it's weird because Luthen is trying to convince Cassian, but I also think he knows that Cassian is somewhat already convinced. I think I think Cassian is trying to. I think at this point it's about Cassian trying to convince himself that he's not interested, when like Luthen and Cassian deep down both know that he's ready to take on the bigger fight.
yeah, I mean, I think Luthen does I agree. I think he understands, and obviously sorry. Something just fell over on my desk. Sorry about this. Luthen obviously, he's very, very confident, strong-willed, and purposeful, to the extent where even if Cassian said, like, I'm taking an escape pod, I don't care about the rebellion, I'm getting out of here, like, still at that point, he wouldn't be shaken, You'd just be
Yeah,
like,
and
well,
he says
okay,
that,
gonna keep going.
Cassian says,
Yeah,
"What's to stop me from doing that?" And he's like, "Oh, you could do that, but you'll just
yeah,
get killed over like Like,
Yeah.
you'll just get killed by the Empire all the same. Look, this whole point, of course, is basically we're all gonna die anyway. Why not, you
Yeah.
know,
But
until we die, why not use the remaining time we have left to take out these bastards?
yeah, I think he understands sort of what kind of a person Cassian is. He understands the situation that Cassian is in. I'm just kind of led him to this, and he understands, I guess, he understands that Cassian is somewhat of a kindred spirit, to him on many levels. Despite Cassian still having his very go it alone mentality. He's instinctively just worrying about the next day. How can I make this into money for myself so I can escape. Because Cassian still is in the mindset of we have to escape the Empire, and Luthen's like, dude, there is no escaping the Empire. Like, listen to what you're
Yeah,
saying. And he says something along the lines of, they'll hang you with the same rope for a single plasma converter or 20 million credits. So he's kind of saying, like, it's a dead end game. The constant,
yeah,
the constant hustling, the constant, on your toes, one step ahead, just trying to survive to the next day. And I mean, he says in the previous episode, he's give it all at once for something real. And that's,
real. Yeah,
pretty much what he's that's pretty much what he's saying here. But I like that we get more of Cassian's backstory as well. And we get that. I like that Luthen also kind of calls him out a little bit. He's like, oh, he's a prison conscript cook. He was on He's like, I served on Minban for 3 years. Yeah, you were a cook for most of that time. Like,
yeah.
Luthen,
No,
don't get ahead of yourself, buddy. You don't know who I am. You don't know what I've done either.
Yeah, no. And now that we know he was on Minbin around the same time as a certain other former Imperial soldier, I need a short story somewhere of Cassian and Han Solo crossing paths. I just kind of need that. I'm sorry. Just kind of like, well, what I do think is fantastic about the show is that there are a lot of people talking about there are a lot of people have talked about, like, I'm not going to go on my whole like soapbox about it, like people comparing Andor to other shows, but like I will just say that there's a lot of people like saying that this show is so great because it's like not that connected with Star Wars, and they're just not looking hard enough. Like
Yeah,
Cassian being
absolutely
connected
not.
with Minbin right there. Like, we'll talk about the references in Luthen's shop. We'll talk about the references that in Mon and Perrin's conversation that will lead directly into the events of season 3 of Star Wars Rebels. Like, this is an uber connected show. Just because
Yeah,
there aren't as many familiar characters and those connections aren't maybe as out front, it's still incredibly connected.
yeah, absolutely. I agree.
And it's a I was gonna say it's incredibly connected to the Star Wars universe, and I'm excited to explore those connections and how it blazes new trails to the show too, because it does both. It can and does both. Uh, what was I gonna say? Yeah, and then there's also this argument that Cassian uses that Luthen uses to convince Cassian again of what I think he's already convinced of, but like, it's very effective, which is the whole like when Cassian's asking what Luthen is, he goes, Alliance, Step, Guerrilla, Partisan Front, isn't it all the same? It is to me, so we agree. It's one of those things, and we'll come back to this once Luthen meets up with Saw Gerrera later in the season, where it's like Luthen is trying to say to Cassian, "Look, you want to kick dirt in the eye of the Empire.
Yeah,
I want to kick dirt in the eye of the Empire. Let's forget the labels. We want the same thing. Like, whether or not we are part of X or Y or Z organization doesn't matter. We want the same thing, and we're willing to do roughly the same things to get it. So let's talk."
yeah. I mean, that is pretty much what it comes down to, I think. I mean, yeah, it's sort of Cassian like is already doing the exact same thing, except in his mind the Empire is too big to fight, and the only way to live a life of meaning is simply to try and, carve out your own peace,
Yeah.
your own little bit of relative prosperity, and safety amidst the totalitarianism that's kind of just crushing everything around you. And I guess that is the main difference between them, is that Cassian thinks that's the best way to live a good life, and then for someone like Luthen, he says like under the Empire, the only good life is to fight the Empire. Like you're never gonna have the life you want. You're never gonna be able to sleep soundly at night if you're just out for yourself, knowing that there's more that you could do. And that's why he's such a lovable character and such a compelling character, because we feel that from him so strongly, especially in these scenes, especially as when they touch down on Aldhani, his conversation with Vel. I mean, if we're ready to move on, the sudden intensity there, like he's so even keeled, he's kind of holding his cards a little bit close to his chest, but he's also open, he's very confident. And all of a sudden, we just really feel the desperation and the high stakes for the rebellion, the razor thin margins of error, of contingency, the space between success or failure, like complete failure, and failure probably meaning annihilation in this case. We feel that in that conversation when he suddenly snaps on Vel. He's like, I'm bringing you what you need. You need this guy.
Yeah.
Like, please.
Yeah. I love Vel.
I can't get enough of in this episode. He's what a character.
No, we have great characters. I love Vel. Vel is like, I feel like one of those great rebel leaders already after one season that we can put up on the pantheon of great rebel leaders, along with your Mon Mothmas and Bail Organa's and Hera's, and even later on people like Lando and stuff like that. Like she is. I'm very excited to see her again in season 2. My favorite supporting character of the show, and I really like how Faye Marseille plays her in this season. I think she's great. Before we get on to Aldhani specifically, I do want to just talk about, because I know I referenced it last time we recorded this episode, and I cannot not talk about this thing within the episode. But the crystal that Luthen gives Cassian as a down payment, he says it celebrates the uprising against the Rakatan invaders. Whoever at the Lucasfilm Story Group put this reference into the script deserves a raise and as many promotions as you could possibly give them. The fact that veteran film and television actor Stellan Skarsgård just said the word Rakatan in a live-action Star Wars project is a fucking fever dream. And I love it. Like, I don't think people realize how freaking insane that is. Like, forget anything had happened in The Mandalorian or the Book of Boba Fett before that, like Cobb Vanth or Kersantin or Ahsoka or whatever it is, or the mention of Grand Admiral. I don't care about any of that. Rakatan being mentioned in Andor is wild. It's just wild.
I think of like sixth grade me, poring over, the old, like the Star Wars, the essential Star Wars Atlas and all those things, piecing together like the Rakatan history, talking about Rakata Prime. If I knew this was coming back then, that would have blown my mind. It would have absolutely blown my mind.
The insanity of this too is it's not just that it's KOTOR. It's that the Rakatans aren't actually really from the KOTOR time period. They're from before that.
Like 30,000 in Legends, like 30,000 years before BB, like 30,000 years BBY, 30,000 years before everything, basically.
25K, I think it is, but pretty much.
Something crazy.
This is galactic
like that.
prehistory. This is not. This is not from that one video game that takes place a few thousand years before the saga. No. This is from the lore of that one video game, and it shows up very briefly at the very end. Again, we covered during some of the first episodes of Star Wars: The Galaxy. I love that we're recording this so close to 5 years, because this relates back to some of the first episodes of Star Wars: The Galaxy we ever recorded 5 years ago. This is galactic prehistory we're talking about. And, they got Stellan Skarsgård to just say it like it's no big deal. And, I know that, not to go on too much of a tangent, but I know, that Lucasfilm has been very reluctant do anything related to the Old Republic. I think because they know how much that era means to a lot of fans, whether it's the KOTOR games or the SWTOR MMORPG or the comics, Tales of the Jedi, and all that kind of stuff. Like, I know they know it means a lot to people, and I know they wanna. I think once they decide they want to do the Old Republic, they're gonna want to dedicate as much time and energy to it as they can, and I deeply respect that.
Yeah, I
And I'm
mean, I think
telling
it's
and I'm telling Lucasfilm, I'm telling you, Lucasfilm, not that you're listening to me or anything like that, but I'm telling you, people are gonna hate this no matter what. People are gonna love this no matter what. Knock yourselves out. I want to see the new Old Republic. The other, KOTOR is still gonna exist. The SWTOR stuff's gonna exist. The comics are still gonna exist from Legends. Let people enjoy that.
yeah,
Let's see, do what you've been doing for other stuff with canon. Take some of the best elements. Sure, take the Rakatans. Take Revan. We know Revan's canon. We know
yeah.
we bring Malgus back. Sure, whatever. Bring the Shan dynasty back. Whatever. Do what you want to do. Add some new stuff in there. Go nuts. I want to see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's. I don't. I mean, if I'm at Lucasfilm, I don't know what I'm thinking about. Tackling KOTOR, all the old stuff. Pre Bane, everything pre Bane, basically, because you have such a sort of beloved, mythology and cosmos of games and books and everything built up already. Do
Yeah.
you like I feel like ultimately we know this about Star Wars fans. There's no way everyone's going to be happy. Obviously, you can do it well and you can do it badly. There's no way everyone's going to be happy. I mean, like if you take a lot of the elements and hew a little bit more closely to what we already have, you know, if you change stuff, people are going to say you fucked it up. If you go in a completely different direction, I can also understand and empathize with why people would find that upsetting as well. So I kind of feel fortunate that I'm not in, you know, I feel very fortunate that I'm, I just get to sit on the sidelines and, talk about it with my friends, and I don't have to
Yeah.
be in the driver's seat or anything.
Yeah.
But
No,
yeah, this is
I get
definitely
it.
for me like kind of a head. I mean, it's the classic conundrum. It's the same exact thing that's been
Yeah.
happening since what 2013. Was that when they pulled the trigger? Was it 2013?
Late 2012, but yeah.
Late 20, yeah. So I mean, we're kind of dealing with these questions for over a decade now, and I don't think it's really gotten any easier. I mean, I know my personal headcanon is kind of like, unless something is like unless something from Legends is explicitly contradicted by something in canon, I feel like I kind of just
Head
consider
Legends.
it. I consider
We
it
made
part
this.
of like the same storyline.
Yeah,
Like
Head Legends.
the more I think, yeah, head legend. Like the more I think about it, the older I get. To be honest, the more I'm just like, look, Star Wars is Star Wars. It's done incredible things for my life and a lot of people's lives. It's brought me closer to a lot of people. I met a lot of people through it. But at the end of the day, it's just stories. Like I'm gonna like what I like. I'm gonna dislike what I dislike. It doesn't really matter
Yeah.
to me. At a certain point, it like doesn't matter what's considered canon or legends. Because ultimately, it's all
Yeah.
part of the same universe. And like the reason that people talk about it, the reason that people keep reading and watching and coming back to the new stuff, and like coming back for the new stuff, going back to the old stuff, keep rereading the Timothy Jean, it's because that it's all united under the same umbrella of like the love that this community has for the story and like the love we have for what that means. And I kind of take
Oh,
comfort in the fact that like
absolutely.
ultimately, like it's not like it's not like these stories get fucking Thanos snapped out of existence. Like I
Oh,
feel like
absolutely.
we can kind of like hold it precious and also take a breath at the same time. I've been on a tangent.
No, no, no,
Ricotta
no worries. No,
was wild. I
I
love it. I love
yeah.
it so much. Thank you, Andor, for giving us ricotta, because I can still remember you, Eli. When we first met you in like fifth or sixth grade, I can still remember you. I think you said something. You said to me, Jacob, when will you stop ranting about Rocket Up Prime? I think if I recall, that was when I had unhealthy obsession with the planet of Rocket Prime in specific. I can't even remember why at this point.
But
It was one of the early
you were
moments I had.
vindicated. You
I
were
was I
vindicated.
guess I was vindicated. Hey, if we ever get Rocket Prime, I don't
I
even know what
mean,
I'm gonna do.
I will. I
I'm
will
gonna
just
smoke
say
pot.
also, we have a canon version of Rocket Prime. It's called Scarif.
Is that really like, as in like tropical ocean planet, or
I mean,
like
like, yeah,
is
I
there
just
actually
mean
like
like
a
the vibes of the planets are like very similar.
yeah? But I want like ancient crazy ancient temples, like ruins of massive super weapons and like crazy galaxy manipulating machinery. Like I
Well,
want all that. I
Scarif,
want
you
all
have
that
no
stuff.
lack of super weapons on Scarif.
Unfortunately, unfortunately, that's true. R.I.P.
R.I.P. Scarif.
R.I.P. Rogue One. R.I.P. the Rogue One crew. But
That's the end of this journey, though. But anyway, let's go back to this A plot. We have this plucky little team of rebels here. We have we have Nemec with his little freaking figures. Alex Lothar doing a bang up job. They're another one of my favorite like minor characters in this show, who we see for these 3 episodes, and then obviously unfortunately, he ain't gonna make it. Spoilers, but but it's nice that we're spending time with him and Gorn and Perrin and Cinta, who obviously we're gonna get through this entire season. We get this nice little and Skeen, and we'll see what Skeen believes. He's like Cassian. He's also a mercenary, and we'll see like that within them the two different representations of how it's something actually that Nemec will talk about, I believe, next episode, which is like he's thinking of writing his own manifesto about like the role of mercenaries and hired help within a rebellion, and how he wants to intellectualize everything, but he wants
yeah,
to like intellectualize about that, and
I
I'm
love
interested
Nemec
just
though. I love Nemec.
yeah, no, Nemec's great. No, Nemec's awesome, and I think he's one of the purest of all of them, which I think
Yeah,
brings that charm. He believes in the ideology wholeheartedly, but he hasn't had the experience like
yeah,
Cassian, like Vel. We can clearly see like Cinta, and there is something, and there's something really charming about that. Skeen, I'm also interested in watching him because even Moss Backrack, who is playing Skeen, is going to be in Fantastic Four this year, and the difference between Arvel Skeen as a character and Ben Grimm or the Thing is like massive, and I want to see how he's gonna take on he's here talking about like just spoilers. He's gonna be an absolute scumbag by the time this arc wraps up, and then I'm gonna go to the theater later this year and hear it's clobbering time from him, and so I'm trying to like make that make sense in my brain, but yeah, and then I'm looking back at the notes. We have that line, which we'll explore, which is another issue we'll explore especially in the next episode, which is the conquering by the Empire of Aldhani. The Aldhanis were here for centuries, but it only took the Empire a decade to clear them out, which is unfortunately, as we've seen, rebels. I'm thinking of that one short in Visions in the Stars, as well as others.
yeah,
Thinking, Rogue One, all these other pieces in those Reign of the Empire made, like Bad Batch and the Jedi games. This is what the Empire does: they take and they destroy, and that's it.
yeah,
And that's another thing, is that like as not Star Wars as people want to claim that Andor is, it also does a lot with Star Wars themes. This is one of them. Like the Empire doesn't understand the places they're conquering, and that ultimately is their downfall. Every single time, it's with Lothal, it's with Aldhani, it's with Ferrex, it's with it'll be with every place they conquer. Is that they never take time to understand or appreciate the cultures that they're taking over, because taking over and the colonization and the like all that kind of stuff is literally the exact opposite. Is literally forbids any sort of empathy or care about that kind of thing. So every time they do that, they're always going to be defeated by the tools of the community, by the weapons of the community, by all that kind of stuff that they just don't care about. They don't give a shit about because they don't think they need to.
Yeah, empire in the like empires run on, as a general rule, empires run on the dispossession, displacement, and destruction, of native and local peoples, and existing communities. I think the show is kind of making a point of saying like, hey, Aldhani is no different. Like, we're trying to say something, like, take this seriously, and I can appreciate that about this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't,
Do you have anything
that's it for
else
me here.
for the main subplot of this episode, or should we go on to plot B?
I don't know, I think I really like Aldani because I think it just kind of shows, I think, in a lot of the rebellion stories, even in things, and I'm not kind of like trying to dump on anything else here. Rebels is this way, and a lot of these things is just sort of, you know, it's a lot of like really, really, a lot of very, very cavalier decisions being made. It's like, okay, we got to go do this, crazy, you know, a crazy high intensity, high risk rescue mission. All right, let's all pile in the ship. We'll go, and then, in 4 hours it'll be done, and everyone will come back in one piece. And we just came up with the
Yeah.
plan this morning, and we're gonna hit it. Like, that's what stuff like Rebels kind of is like most of the time.
Yeah, and that's what
And I
Star
love
Wars is
Rebels.
most of the time,
Yeah,
and
this
there's
is
a place
something
for that.
completely different, where this is more realistic to what it would be like to pull something off like this. From everything that I've read of, military police operations, things of this, anything of this nature. And I love that because it really kind of, it puts us in the real frame of like the real cost of the rebellion for the people on the ground, for the people like Vel, spending 6 months, desperately hiding from TIE fighters and patrols, just to have a shot at this one mission, at this 5 minute window, or whatever, however long it is. I can't remember exactly. 7 minute window with the eye. This is like that's kind of showing a different level of sort of intensity and sacrifice and dedication in the rebellion, which I really kind of appreciate, just the perspective that brings to the rest of Star Wars for people watching this. I think, to go along with that, the TIE fighter scene, for example, I think the way a single TIE fighter, usually seen as, incredibly
Yeah,
expendable, not very dangerous to, the fancy heroes, flying around in their ship. I think the TIE fighter scene, and just how scary
yeah,
and dangerous that one TIE fighter becomes, that's a that's emblematic of how this show that's emblematic of the show's approach of just putting the microscope on the human beings that are, making this all run, making the rebellion run, making the empire run, making it possible for there to be moments like Luke Skywalker blowing up the Death Star, which is actually the product of, layers and 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 years of, sacrifice, work, subterfuge. You get the idea. But yeah, I love the Aldani arc. I love the part of this episode on Aldani. I want to talk about Nemec one more time, because I think he just, there's something about him being in the show that, to me, is like, in any hypothetical situation, if shit really hits the fan, most of us are Nemec. We are not the Cassians and the Vels and the badasses of the world. Like, Nemec is just a guy who has strong ideas and needs to stand up for them, and has found himself in a pretty insane situation because of that. And that is the reality of how I think, how this really works. And I think that, again, that's just as much that's just as much a part of, revolutions, resistance against authoritarianism, whatever we want to frame it as. as, you know, Harris and Dula, you know, flying around in the Ghost, blasting TIE fighters left and right. You feel me? That's what I love about Nemec, is all I wanted to say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, I totally get that. The again, the grounded nature of the show, the way that we're seeing similar Star Wars motifs in a new light. Um, you know, I like the Aldhani, I like the A subplot of this a lot, but I want to get to the B plot of this episode, which was where the bulk of the new tone of this show came into place. And that is that is going to Coruscant with Mon Mothma. I'm so glad that Mon Mothma is the secondary lead of the show. She is a great idea for a character that has just been expanded on so beautifully over the years. You know, Carolyn Blackiston spent a glorious 26 and a half seconds or something like that as her in Return of the Jedi, and then there were deleted scenes of Genevieve O'Reilly in Revenge of the Sith, and then Dave Filoni and Henry Gilroy brought her back for Rebels, and then she was brought back for Rogue One, and like everything has been building up to her as a lead character in this series, and I'm excited to, of course, see her again in season 2 later this year. But yeah, as said in my notes, and I dubbed sort of the, where did I say this? I think this was here. I talked about this. The Joel Edgerton effect. Yes, the Joel Edgerton effect, which I named after a phenomenon that Deborah Chow discovered on the set of Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is that George cast Joel Edgerton as Owen Lars, as the young version of Owen Lars in 2002 for Attack of the Clones. And then he appeared again for Revenge of the Sith, and it was a pretty minor plot. And Deborah Chow was remarking in a behind the scenes special about on Kenobi that she was just like amazed at how great of an actor Joel Edgerton and Bonnie P.S., who was the younger Aunt Beru, was and how great George was for casting them as these small roles who probably like didn't mean a lot to him at the time, but were such great gifts to him such great gifts to her as she was developing the series and staging the series in years forward. And we got this a lot in Star Wars, and Genevieve O'Reilly is another one of those cases where I doubt that the casting was super intentionally minded. You know, Genevieve O'Reilly was in a few scenes of Revenge of the Sith that ultimately got left on the cutting room floor, but she is a phenomenal actress, and and I'm sure Tony Gilroy and everybody developing the series counted themselves lucky that George casted her all those years ago. Now, almost 20 years now 20 years ago. And yeah, no, I think she's great. I think the other thing that I really appreciate about her subplot is this whole thing about, oh yeah, she has a husband that we've never heard about.
Yeah.
And it's like it's one of those things where like most people wouldn't do like it's one of those places where I actually do feel like the irreverence for Star Wars that Tony Gilroy has actually does serve people and serve him and the other writers in this case, because it's like, yeah, who says she doesn't? You know, we've never heard about it before, but it's not like we've heard a ton about Mon Mothma as a person before.
I think
Who
it
says
adds
she
a hell of a
doesn't?
lot to the story. So I think,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
and that's why they added it, because it adds a lot to the story, and because to see her being, we assumed at least, sort semi forced into this marriage. Who knows how much love they had or have for each other even now? You know, that's still kind of a question the show leaves open. But you know, to share such an intimate partnership with somebody who just actively does not believe what you do about the way the galaxy works, and is basically willingly blind to injustices that are perpetuated in the galaxy, because hey, he's the husband of a senator, and he basically gets to do whatever he wants, and
Yeah.
that's fine, I guess.
I mean,
Perrin
that's
is
the
a ruthlessly annoying character, and I love how they wrote him because of that.
must everything be boring and sad, he says.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely an irksome yet well designed, well written character. I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I
It's
think
it's a
that's the reality that there are people who don't, care as much, or don't quite, you know,
oh yeah, no,
don't
the
quite
reason that
together.
the reason that Perrin's such an effective character is that we see a million Perrins around us every day. Is that
And
there
it's
are so many
infuriating.
people who see we see people constantly who are directly staring at the injustice in the world, and they're just like, yeah, I don't care. Through our media around us, whatever it is, it's like the reason that Perrin is so annoying is because we've seen him before, and he's written as annoyingly as those people sound. And yeah, there's what I'm gonna say. Jumping into that conversation between Mon and Perrin later. No, he's talking about like these people are fun, and Mon Mothma goes, "The are they? Are they fun?" These people he's talking about Ars Dangor, who's one of the advisors to Palpatine, direct advisors to Palpatine. One of, I don't think we actually see him on the second Death Star, but one of those guys in the purple robes on the Death Star, on the second Death Star. That's who he is. And then Slimore, who is literally the personal assistant to the Emperor. Like, these are not like these are people who are literally the assistants to the fascist in chief. Like,
Yeah.
there is no ambiguity about these people. These people are part of the fascist institution. They just
Yeah.
are.
No
And
ifs, buts.
but they're fun dinner. But yeah, they're fun dinner guests, so I guess that's okay. And it's a she of course snaps back. We should find some Gorman guests for tonight. See how amused they are. Your fun friends just cut off their shipping lanes yesterday, which is, by the way, another integration of the Star Wars canon that I adore. The Gormans we know are involved in what eventually is known as the Gorman massacre, which is kind of what I think of, like I think of as the Boston Massacre, for those who know American history, as the start of the American War for Independence. This is the far more brutal version of that in the Galaxy Far, Far Away. We'll hear about it in Rebels. There is a great, if you love Andor, if you love Star Wars Rebels, I highly recommend picking up a copy of the Rebel Handbook, I believe it's called, the Rebel Files, which is one of those
Yeah.
in-universe source books, except for this one, it's actually canon. The other ones are all legends. This one is actually canon. This one was written probably while Andor was in development. We don't know exactly what
It was
stage
written,
Andor
what,
was
like
in.
2018, 2019 this book came out?
28,
Maybe 2017?
2018. I think it
That's
was
something around that
2017.
time.
I know it was before the end of Rebels because there's a note from Leia in that book that kind of spoils the end of Rebels.
Oops.
Um, it
Okay,
it,
yeah.
it
That
basically
makes sense.
it only spoiled the fact that Hera survives, but
Oh,
yeah, I remember specifically reading that and being like, oh, okay, so she survives. And she becomes the
yeah.
general, which I think actually, well, Rogue One had already released, so we already knew that, so whatever. Either way, they go into the Gorman Massacre specifically a lot, and I think it will be depicted in season 2 of Andor. We talked about this last time we recorded this. Do you remember what the Gorman Massacre is in Legends?
Not in the slightest, I'm afraid.
Okay, I'm so glad because I get to explain this to you a second time what the Gorman Massacre is in Legends because it's so ridiculous. So the Gorman Massacre happens in Legends on the planet of Gorman, but this time in Legends it happens like over a decade earlier. It happens circa 18 BBY. So a year after the creation of the Empire. And this one, so the Gorman massacre in is the straw that breaks the camel's back for Mon Mothma. That makes her go, yeah, no, screw this. We're starting this goddamn rebellion. It convinces Mothma of something similar in Legends, but not the same thing. She doesn't start the rebellion then. What basically the Gorman massacre in Legends is her first inkling that, hey, maybe trying to change this from the inside can't be done. But basically, the Gorman massacre, there were protesters on Gorman protesting something terrible that the Empire was doing. I don't really know. They were protesting new Imperial taxes apparently on Gorman, and the protesters decided to take to the landing strip of the ship of Grand Moff Tarkin.
Oh yeah, I remember now.
Captain Will of Tarkin. And so
I remember now. Yup.
yeah. So you look this up. If you go to Wikipedia and Legends, he lands the ship on them. He lands the ship on protesters, killing dozens at least, hundreds severely injured. It's what inspires the delegation of 2000 that's established in Revenge of the Sith to being like, okay, we got to bring this freaking government down. They're just straight up evil. It's not like we can reform this thing. They're just straight up evil. And yeah, but the Gorman massacre, I think, is going to be a bit more of we know that in canon it involves the Imperial troops opening fire on peaceful protesters. And I think from what we've seen in Andor so far, and with this season, although I think it will be featured in season 2, it will be like protesters are protesting about something terrible the Empire is undoubtedly doing on Gorman, and the Empire is going to open fire on peaceful protesters, or maybe, well, actually, I think it starts with a blockade, just like Naboo does. So, but yeah, either way, integrating the Gorman people. Yeah, they cut off their shipping lanes. The Empire cut off their shipping lanes at this point. But the point I was trying to make is that, like, for people for casual fans just watching this show, they'll be like, oh, okay, that sounds bad. The Empire's doing the bad things to these people on Gorman. But for us, we can sit there and go, oh, we know where this is going.
Yeah.
And that's a great feeling. Like, to just and that's what I love. And I think Lucasfilm has gotten really good about that. Actually, I think they've gotten good at, like, putting little things in all of their shows where casual fans will be like, okay, we get this, and hardcore fans will be like, oh, you know what this means. Speaking of references like that, a lot of them in this episode, in addition to the conversation with Perrin in his shop, where right behind Luthen is a full set of Sith Stalker armor from The Force Unleashed 2. One of the edgiest, like, if there was a video game that you could describe as the most opposite of Andor, despite having a lot of the same aesthetics, it would be The Force Unleashed 2. Starkiller is the edgiest Dubro fantasy shit, like, fucking ever. And I mean that especially for the Starkiller clone, and believe me, we will be getting to TFU and TFU2 on In a Galaxy at some point. When we get there, I will have us do it. It'll be interesting. I know there are friends of the show. I'll shout out friends of the show, Jared the Dark Jedi, and friend of the show, Buck O'Brien, who are huge Starkiller fans, who I'm tempted to just have the two of them on as co-hosts along with Jacob for TFU seasons, because they're the only ones I think who really tolerate, let alone love, The Force Unleashed. And I say that like it's horrible.
I won't knock it till I've tried it. I won't knock it till I've tried it.
I think the Force Unleashed is the definition of a good Star Wars story. Not great, not terrible, just good. But yeah, the Sith Stalker armor in the background, and a bunch of other canon references. That he's trying to sell her an Utapawan cut, which is also cool. But we have this backdoor dealing and stuff like that, and which is I love all the danger of it. I think I mentioned this when we recorded last time, but there's this while Leia distracts the driver in the front, they're like, okay, we don't know how much time we have for this. We got to be quick about this. And this Mothma starts talking about bringing someone else in the fold. And I remember all the speculation. Oh, is it Draven? Is it Akbar? Is it or is it Merrick? Who could this be? Spoiler: it turns out to be just some banker she knew and had a thing for like 15 years ago. It was just a new character. It's not complicated. And yeah. Is there anything else you have about Mon Mothma's subplot?
Don't think so. I love it though.
All right.
I love it, but I
Let's
think
get
you
to
said it
the
pretty much.
C plot of this episode, which is entering the Imperial Security Bureau, which is actually the first place we go on Coruscant. Cassian is now dealing with the big dogs. Say what you want about Cyril and his associates, except for don't, because they were terrible about doing they were terrible at their jobs. There's like I want to be clear. All of these people are all terrible and are all fascists, but these fascists know what they're doing a lot more. We're talking about the big dogs. Cassian and his rebel friends are in real danger from these people. I'm not saying they weren't in danger from Cyril and the others. I'm saying that Cassian and Luthen pulled a few clever tricks on Cyril that they're not going to get past people like Dedra Miro and Blevin. They're just too smart for that. Not invincibly smart, but smarter. Yeah. Again, a lot of the show is about the sophistications of various communications to people, and with Mon having to sneak around, and Cassian and the crew having to sneak around, and even win the Empire. The politics, the political language, Dedra trying to prove her worth within the Empire, which we talked about the last time we recorded. But it's one of those things that I love about the show, which is like, it positions Dedra as sort of this underdog in the ISB, trying to battle some probably institutional sexism. Because we look at the ISB as a whole in this episode. We see mostly men, including Major Partagaz, who's one of my favorite minor characters, who's just like the perfect encapsulation of like an Imperial officer. Just like, don't get me wrong, he's effective, but he's also arrogant and snooty as hell. I think Anton Lesser plays him so well. There's that great speech he gives at the beginning. Where is it? I had in my notes. What are we? We are healthcare providers. We treat sickness. We identify symptoms. We locate germs wherever they arise from within or have come from the outside. Of like this sort of dehumanization of Imperial enemies and targets, by turning them into germs and viruses. In this analogy, they're removing them of any agency. But either way, my point with Dedra was Dedra is battling this institutional sexism and all these corruptions of the institution. But the show never lets us forget that that even corruptions of an institution, not saying they're not bad, it's just the system is institutionally corrupt. And that is, there's no amount of reform that can fix that. The system is institutionally corrupt, and Dedra, even though she's battling you can argue injustices in the system, is still a bad person.
She's still a bigger perpetrator herself of injustice. I do love that the show kind of has you bounce around between like, oh man, everyone else is kind of being a dick to her, and I feel bad for her. She's trying to do her job. She's trying. Wait a second.
Yeah, wait.
Sly dog. You sly dog. You had me feeling bad for her. Like
there's a great moment like, in.
Those are the shades of gray that is the real life.
Yeah, there's a great moment in like one of the later episodes, I think 10 or 11, where she's like battling like she like there's like a victorious scene of her like outsmarting Levin or something like that, and then the next scene is her going to Ferrix and instituting brutal torture on innocent civilians, where it's like, okay, whatever amount that anybody was rooting for
Yeah, this
you,
3
you
machine.
have completely wiped it. Yeah, you completely wiped it all away,
Yeah, you
and
burned it up.
in fact, you dug yourself
It's done.
a bigger hole, which is something that the show does master. Yeah, I think that's it. All I have, we do have the D plot of this episode, which is Cyril moving back in with his mother, but that doesn't get covered a whole lot in this episode, I think. So we'll save that for a future episode. But yeah, Jacob, what do you think of this episode overall?
Man, I thought it was fantastic. I mean, obviously, I had a lot of good things to say about it. A lot of stuff to sink your teeth into, with Cyril Karn's, character development, introduction, bringing in new threads. I think again, it feels like we're starting out slower here. This is the next start. This is the beginning. We're kind of laying the groundwork. But this time around, I think it's so from the endlessly compelling wall to wall, every single moment, front to back, this episode, that it's you can't complain about that. You can't complain. That's the natural rise and fall. And it's clear that we're starting from like a higher, point of urgency and excitement, and higher stakes than before. And yeah, really, really loving this episode, loving this show. Can't wait for more. Can't wait for more.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. This episode is continuing to build up this very complex, very dense storyline in this season with all its different subplots, and I'm excited to keep going with this in future episodes. That's going to be it for this episode of Star Wars in the Galaxy. I think we were going to sound a lot less. This was definitely a getting back in the swing of things episode with Jacob and I, and we were off put because we recorded this episode before. I think next episode should be back to normal, but before we go, I want to promote a few things. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Star Wars in Galaxy. Next week, we're back. The Axe Forgets, episode 5 of season 1 of Andor, episode 161 of Star Wars in a Galaxy. In the meantime, you can follow us everywhere at In a Galaxy Pod, mostly on Blue Sky now. You can listen to us everywhere, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts will be there. But to plug 2 things, 2 streams on our YouTube channel. First, in 2 days, our 5-year anniversary, us and friends of the show from everywhere. Please, if you're a friend of the show, please don't hesitate. Come on, we'll be sending the StreamYard link out everywhere. We will be answering some Star Wars questions. We'll be celebrating 5 years, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, January 26th. Let's do this. Let's celebrate a year of Star Wars in the Galaxy. And then, let me just make sure I have these dates right. Aha, yes, here we go. A week afterwards. Yeah, give me a second, sorry. A week afterwards, bracket streams are back.
Hell
February
yeah.
2nd. February 2nd. Jacob, myself, Clare Chapman of the Imperial Senate podcast, Cooper and John, formerly of the Nerd Herder podcast, good friends of the show, both of them, and M, formerly of Pink Milk, now of Sisters with Sabers. We are going to be doing our first bracket stream of 2025, where we are going to be getting into the bounty hunters. We're going to be debating who the best bounty hunter from the galaxy far, far away is. So make sure you're tuned in for both of those. We're very excited to bring back streams on In a Galaxy. Epic Conversations, unfortunately, is hitting some delays, but we will be back very soon in the month of February, I'm almost certain. But yeah, I think until next time, all there's left to say is may the Force be with you.
Always.
Always.